India will grow to become the world's third largest economy by 2027, Forbes declared earlier this year. They cited the investment banking group Jefferies, which predicts that India will surpass Japan and Germany to take this position. Also, India's GDP is expected to hit $5 trillion within the next 4 years and nearly $10 trillion by 2030. Not only that, CNBC reported in July 2024 that the country's finance minister announced a capital expenditure of 11.11 trillion Indian rupees, or $133.9 billion, for fiscal year 2025 to improve India's physical and digital infrastructure. As India aims to strengthen its economy and nation, are we witnessing the rise of a new global power? Viksit Bharat 2047. Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared in January, promising to make India a developed nation by 2047. This pledge might seem vague, but in the decades since the Prime Minister first took office, he has been setting the stage for significant economic growth. But when he came to power in 2014, economic growth was slow, and investor confidence was low due to several major corruption cases. However, a report from United Nations universities shows that from 2014 to 2022, India's GDP per capita rose from $5,000 to over $7,000, a 40% increase in 8 years. These figures are adjusted for purchasing power parity, which compares general purchasing power over time and between countries. Now, a decade later, India is growing faster than other major economies. Its banks are strong, and the government's finances are stable, even after a tough pandemic. And last year, India surpassed the UK to become the 5th largest economy. Additionally, Morgan Stanley analysts predict India will become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2027, overtaking Japan and Germany, and will have the 3rd largest stock market by 2030. Chetan Iyer, Morgan Stanley's chief Asia economist, says that in a world lacking growth, India offers significant opportunities that global investors must notice. From 2023 onward, India will be one of only 3 economies to generate over $400 billion in annual economic growth, increasing to over $500 billion after 2028. The International Monetary Fund projects India's real GDP growth at 7% for 2024. This is higher than China's expected 5% growth and surpasses all other major economies. For example, the UK's economy is only expected to grow by 0.7% in 2024. So, undoubtedly, there's a strong sense of optimism in India. The country successfully hosted the G20, became the first to send a rocket near the moon's south pole, and experienced booming stock markets that have positively impacted the wealth of its middle class. And it's not just overall GDP. Since the early days of the internet, firms around the world have outsourced services such as software development, customer service, and company operations to India. With tighter global labor markets and an increase in remote work, the idea of India as the world's back office is gaining steam. In a post-COVID environment, CEOs are more comfortable with both work from home and work from India, says Ritam Desai, Morgan Stanley's chief equity strategist for India. Over the following 10 years, the number of people in India working for foreign corporations is likely to increase, reaching more than 11 million. This development is being driven by worldwide outsourcing spending, which is expected to climb from $180 billion per year to roughly $500 billion by 2030. India is also on track to become the world's factory as tax cuts, investment incentives, and infrastructure spending spur manufacturing investment. Multinationals are now buoyant about the prospects of investing in India, and the government is helping their cause by investing in infrastructure as well as supplying land for building factories, says Chief India economist Upasana Chatra. Also, according to Morgan Stanley research, international firms' favorable perspective on investment in India has reached an all-time high. Manufacturing's contribution to India's GDP might increase from 15.6% to 21% by 2031, potentially doubling India's export market share. But it's not all booming for every sector of the Indian economy. In January, thousands of people gathered outside government recruitment centers in Lucknow, hoping to secure construction jobs in Israel. This scene highlighted India's severe jobs crisis, which is affecting dreams across the country. Business Insider India cited an International Labour Organization report showing that the proportion of unemployed educated youth has risen from 54.2% in the year 2000 to a staggering 65.7% in 2022. Astonishingly, the unemployment rate among graduates is 29.1%, almost 9 times higher than the 3.4% for illiterate individuals. Even those with secondary or higher education face tough odds, with an unemployment rate of 18.4%, 6 times higher than those without education. So with a rising GDP and an economy that's set to conquer the world stage, India has clearly made a name for itself this past 10 years. And in the next few chapters, we'll be exploring a few factors that drive this national economic rise. According to Statista, India has become the world's most populated country in 2022, surpassing China with more than 1.44 billion people. CNN reports that a few years ago, Prime Minister Modi expressed concern about India's population explosion and commended families who carefully examined the implications of having additional children. This population boom is being driven by India's big, dynamic, and young populace, with 65% of Indians under the age of 35, making India the world's largest population of millennials and Generation Z. So what does this mean for the country's growing economy? As said in the previous chapter, most of the unemployed are young graduates who struggle to find good jobs and often end up in low-paying positions. This situation leads to social unrest, poverty, and a growing gap between the rich and poor. The good news is that the government has noticed and is taking action. Prime Minister Modi has taken steps to create more jobs and boost economic growth. One of these steps was setting up the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, which offers funding and skill-building opportunities to individuals and businesses. Also, the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana is the government's flagship program for small enterprises and entrepreneurs. PMMY provides loans to small businesses and firms, assisting them in starting, expanding, or upgrading their operations. Such initiatives not only promote entrepreneurship and small firms in India, but also attract foreign investment. Providing education for a growing population is another major challenge in India, but this is getting addressed as well. According to the Times of India, the country currently has more higher education institutions than ever before. From 2015 to 2018, 150 new universities and nearly 1,570 colleges were established. Furthermore, following 2014, the government approved 7 additional IITs and 7 more IIMs. The Indian government is also expanding existing schools, colleges, and universities, enhancing teacher training, and producing more comprehensive curricula under the National Education Policy. So, while the youth unemployment rate and education are being addressed, India's young demographic can provide major economic benefits since they constitute a sizable share of the labor and potential consumers. Furthermore, a young population can encourage innovation and creativity, which can help a country thrive and prosper. Let's dive into that, shall we? India's short-term economic growth will depend on its large labor force of 678.6 million people, as estimated by S&P Global Market Intelligence. However, making labor market reforms could boost long-term growth. The country's goal to become a major manufacturing hub also hinges on improving worker skills. Progress is being made with nearly 10 million young people benefiting from the Skill India program each year. Also, increasing female participation in the workforce is crucial for future growth, as only 24% of women were working in 2022, according to S&P Global. This large labor force offers a valuable resource for businesses looking to fill jobs and expand, especially compared to developed countries where aging populations are shrinking the workforce. Additionally, India's economic expansion has been fueled in large parts by the purchasing power of over 1 billion people. Increased consumption has contributed significantly to economic growth during the last decade. Private final consumption expenditure, or PFCE, has increased at an average annual pace of 11.3%, exceeding the nominal GDP growth rate of 10.6%. The share of PFCE in GDP has increased from 55% to 60%. While higher incomes lead to more spending, several structural changes are shaping India's consumption patterns. With ongoing economic growth and a growing population, spending is expected to keep rising and remain a key driver of economic progress. Other than the massive population contributing to the large workforce of the country, India's large youth population creates a situation known as a demographic dividend, where the number of working-age people greatly exceeds the number of dependents, like children and the elderly. Ernst & Young predicts that by 2056, India's ratio of young dependents or children under 15 will surpass that of older dependents. With a median age of 28.4 years, India has a relatively young population. About 26% of its people are under 14 years old, 67% are between 15 and 64, and 7% are over 65. In comparison, about 17% of the US population and over 21% of Europe's population are over 65. India's young population not only gives it an advantage in the services and manufacturing industries, but it also increases consumer spending on non-essential products. The country's success in exporting IT and BPO services exemplifies how it has leveraged its demographic advantages. Also, according to EY, India has the largest number of English-speaking graduates with backgrounds in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, setting it apart from other regions. Each year, about 2.14 million new STEM graduates enter the workforce, and India leads the world with 47.1% of its STEM graduates being women. The country's powerful STEM potential plays a vital role in the different sectors involved in pushing India towards that dream their Prime Minister promised. Other than the nation's growing population and booming youthful potential, there are also several other factors and areas that have propelled India's economy. Let's dip our toes into a few of them in this chapter. Speaking of STEM, Prime Minister Modi's push for digital governance is starting to make a difference for some of India's poorest people. This digital revolution is built on a three-part system: universal identity cards, an easy-to-use payments network for transferring money, and a data system that provides access to important personal documents like tax returns. By linking millions of bank accounts to this digital framework, India has reduced red tape and corruption. By March 2021, it's estimated that this digital system saved about 1.1% of the GDP. This has allowed the government to distribute social benefits, cash handouts, and invest in infrastructure, all while keeping deficits low. India's push towards a more digital future is reflected in its thriving IT industry, which is a major driver of economic growth. The country has become a global leader in IT services, with its IT and business process outsourcing sectors making up more than 60% of its service exports. This impressive growth has led to a consistent annual increase of 14% in dollar terms for service exports over the past 20 years. Known for its skilled workforce and competitive prices, India serves major companies around the world. India is known as the IT outsourcing hub, serving major companies in Europe and North America. Last year, India earned nearly $193 billion in export revenue, which is more than 3 times the size of its own domestic market, according to Statista data. The most popular sectors in this export boom are IT services and IT-enabled services, with IT services alone making up over half of the total revenue. This booming industry has generated millions of jobs within India, boosting domestic consumption and contributing to overall growth. Another way IT is driving economic growth is its role as a GDP contributor. India stands as a major hub for IT and business process management, or BPM services worldwide. In the fiscal year 2023, the IT BPM sector contributed around 7.5% to the country's GDP. Additionally, the India Brand Equity Foundation predicts this contribution will grow, possibly reaching 10% by 2025. Lastly, India is pushing forward in new tech areas like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and cybersecurity. India AI and Meta have teamed up to boost research and development in AI and related technologies, aiming for major advances in AI applications. They are also exploring the creation of a center of excellence to support and grow the AI and emerging tech startup community. Another area worth mentioning that's driving the country's economic growth is the manufacturing industry. India's manufacturing industry has the potential to be a big global player. Several major reasons contribute to its expansion. First, India has a large and increasing domestic market, which produces strong demand for locally produced goods while reducing reliance on exports. This establishes a firm foundation for the industry's growth. Furthermore, 10% of the population generates nearly 60% of the nation's total annual income, which amounts to approximately $2 trillion. This exceeds the GDPs of Australia, South Korea, and Spain, and is approaching Italy's GDP. Another factor driving the manufacturing industry is the competitive workforce, as India has a huge and relatively inexpensive labor pool, making it a tempting option for corporations trying to reduce expenses. According to the Times of India, firms around the world frequently hire Indian workers regardless of location. With the nation accounting for 15% of the world's population, this provides a substantial advantage. Many enterprises today rely on India, Bangladesh, and China for labor-intensive jobs, including building, assembly, and maintenance. And in line with manufacturing being a driving force for the economy, the Indian government intends to develop the manufacturing sector to $1 trillion by 2025 to 2026. As noted by Business Standard, investments in Indian manufacturing are increasing dramatically, indicating a significant shift in the country's economic landscape. Currently contributing about 17% to GDP, the sector is expected to reach 21% in the next 6 to 7 years, reflecting India's growing role in global supply chains. Morgan Stanley experts also support this view, predicting that manufacturing's share of India's GDP will hit 21% by 2031. Lastly, the service sector is another key driver of India's economy. It has become a major force and has significant room for further growth. According to the Ministry of Finance, the services sector now contributes around 55% to the gross value added, returning to its pre-pandemic levels. This shows its vital role in boosting economic growth. The sector also creates many jobs, improving lives and stimulating domestic spending. It includes diverse areas such as IT, finance, healthcare, education, tourism, and logistics, which helps reduce risks and support steady growth across different fields. IT, manufacturing, and services. These are just but a few of the country's springboards into an ever-evolving growing economy. India's strategic importance in South Asia stems from a confluence of factors, making it a central player in the region's security and economic landscape. Its strength and importance to South Asia boils down to several factors. Let's explore some, shall we? For starters, India's strategic location and size makes it valuable in South Asia. India, the largest country in the region, has borders with many neighbors, including Afghanistan and Pakistan to the northwest, China, Bhutan, and Nepal to the north, Myanmar to the east, and Bangladesh to the northeast. It is also near Sri Lanka to the southeast and the Maldives to the southwest. This central position provides India a strategic advantage, which influences regional dynamics. This strategic location strengthens India's position on trade routes and maritime security. India is also a regional military powerhouse, having maintained its status as the world's fourth strongest military, with the United States ranking first, followed by Russia and China. This military strength enables India to prevent regional threats and wield influence. Last year, India took steps to boost its defense connections with various countries in the region. The diplomat reads, India's growing defense diplomacy in Southeast Asia, seeing them as key allies. In April of this year, India and the Philippines deepened their relationship with the delivery of BrahMos missiles, the first major defense export deal for India. This move is part of a larger strategy by New Delhi to increase defense cooperation with Southeast Asian nations. Such collaborations enhance regional security and strengthen India's position in the area. However, when it comes to the country's relationship with China, it stands a little more complex and marked by both cooperation and competition. For instance, India has steadily upgraded its military with a focus on air power, missile technology, and border infrastructure. The modernization efforts have three main goals. First, to improve defense readiness to deal with complex security challenges and support India's foreign policy. Second, to improve the acquisition and management of defense resources. And third, to build a strong defense industry capable of handling emergencies and supporting India's growing global influence. These measures attempt to enhance India's defenses and potentially deter Chinese attack. India is also balancing China's influence through strategic partnerships. By teaming up with the United States, Japan, and Australia, known as the Quad, India and its allies focus on addressing key issues in the Indo-Pacific region. Their collaborative efforts target health security, climate change, infrastructure, technology, cybersecurity, humanitarian aid, space, maritime security, fighting misinformation, and counterterrorism. These alliances help counter China's increasing military strength in the area. Lastly, speaking on the relationship between the two countries, in response to China's aggressive actions on the border, the Indian government warned that the entire relationship with China was at risk. For the first time in decades, India argued that China had destroyed the carefully built trust between the two countries, making it impossible for their relationship to return to normal until the border issues were settled. India placed new restrictions on Chinese investments, even though trade between the two nations continued to grow, and took a stronger stance in its diplomacy. With a rising GDP, a booming industry in IT, manufacturing and services, and young, fresh minds leading the charge for innovation, the stage for India's economic boom is set. It's only a matter of time before it solidifies its place on the global stage and potentially becomes a major global powerhouse. Thank you for watching.